Chapter 12. Hunt for Innovation. A strong foundation is not enough. Before we can succeed, we have to have a strong foundation. There's no question about it. We have to make sure that our house is in order, because without a strong foundation, we won't be able to take advantage of the resources available to us. Opportunity comes to those who are prepared. Luck happens when preparation meets opportunity. There's a reason why these are cliches. A strong foundation is fostering our wisdom, having a clear view of our advantages and disadvantages, and structuring our teams properly. It's knowing the limits of our capabilities and constantly working to close gaps to minimize our mistakes and deprive others of the opportunity to take advantage of us. It's everything that we've talked about before. However, even after all that, Sun Tzu would probably say that it still wasn't enough. Let me throw you a hypothetical. In a world where everyone had read The Art of War, who would win? For instance, everyone who lived in the period of the Three Kingdoms studied the art of war, but there was only one Zhuge. Having a strong foundation is important, but not enough. To succeed, we must find novel ways of applying our skills and talent. We have to be innovative, distinctive, and different. At first blush, this might feel daunting. You might ask, what skills or special sauce do I have to add? Few of us view ourselves as Steve Jobs or Shakespeare. This, I believe, is a function of modern society. Few of us are asked to truly create in our jobs. Most of our work involves following orders, improving procedures, and finding ways to do what we do more efficiently. Sometimes the opportunity does come to be more creative. Maybe we have to design a new product, or maybe we've been asked to attend some creative workshops. But do you know what typically happens in those moments of opportunity? Nothing. In those moments, our creativity fails us because we're not used to exercising it. It's not a muscle we've developed, and therefore we find it hard to think outside the sandbox we're accustomed to playing in. But seen another way, this could also be quite encouraging. It's because you're not Steve Jobs that you have the motivation to create something that is uniquely yours. Through the multitude of failures, panic attacks, wrong turns, and bouts of self-doubt that you will inevitably experience, you will wander closer to creating something that you'll be proud to call your own. Elizabeth Gilbert writes, aspiring writers will often tell me, I have an idea, but I'm afraid it's already been done. Well, yes, it probably has already been done. Most things have already been done, but they have not yet been done by you. And that's exactly the point. Your insight is always insightful. Your insight matters because it feels important and original to you. More than the piece of knowledge itself, it's the piece of knowledge in your hands that is what will give you your edge. Even though truly distinctive ideas may be rare, humanity's progress and innovation marches on. What people don't realize is the life force of an idea doesn't come from the idea itself, but from the person who brings it to life. We might not have any particularly unique skills, knowledge, or background compared to others, but how we choose to combine them with our experience will be unique. All timeless musical compositions are crafted using the same basic musical notes. All types of worldly colors are created from the same three basic primary colors. All types of delicious and mouth-watering foods from across cultures are created from the same basic tastes of sweet, sour, salt, and bitter. Sun Tzu understood that our ability to create success was limited only by our minds, and our minds are machines that are ceaselessly evolving. Nothing was impossible. Possibilities were limited only by our imagination and our ability to find a way to achieve our dreams. So don't be disheartened, be encouraged. We might not create a Beethoven masterpiece on our first try, but it will certainly get us closer to where we were before. All it takes is a little bit of courage for us to be the one who picks up the pen to draw something different. If nobody else is doing it, why not you? Besiege Wei to rescue Zhao. During the Warring States period, the state of Zhao asked Qi for help as they were under siege from the aggressive Wei dynasty. Before leaving for the march, one of Qi's captains asked his general, Sir, where are we marching to? What is the best way to rescue Zhao? The general replied, Of course we are marching towards Zhao. They are already surrounded by the armies of Wei. But the captain disagreed with him. No, General, we should march toward the lands of Wei. Their attack on Zhao would have left most of their territories defenseless and weak. If we attack and surround their kingdom now, we will have no choice but to pull their armies back, and we will be able to free Zhao without fighting one battle. Because Qi was attacking something valuable to Wei but undefended, Wei would have no choice but to retreat or risk losing their home base. This was an extremely imaginative strategy at the time, using the principles of Sun Tzu in a completely different way. It was so innovative that this tactic is now referred to as besiege Wei to rescue Zhao, one of Zhuge Liang's 36 stratagems. Take continuous action. When I was preparing to write this book, I read Stephen King's On Writing, a memoir of the craft. It's a great book about his philosophy and process of writing. One of my favorite quotes is, "When you write a book, you spend day after day scanning and identifying the trees. When you're done, you have to step back and look at the forest." One way of understanding this quote could be that we have to remind ourselves to periodically take a step back to put our work into perspective. But my interpretation is that King is also saying that a forest is made of many magnificent and distinctive trees, each as important as the next. It's only because of our continued effort to cultivate each individual tree that we're rewarded with the beauty of an entire forest. Sun Tzu uses the image of a circle to explain. If you zoom into the line of a circle, you'll see the dots of ink that make up its edge, one point next to another. When we zoom out and look at the page as a whole, we'll only see a continuous line. It looks like a continuous line, but in reality, the edge of a circle consists of an infinite number of points. Each point is both a starting and ending point for the next. Sun Tzu says we have to approach life the same way. One action must follow the next. We have to be relentless in our effort to push through. We have to have perseverance and endurance, like a river that continually flows without end. That's where the magic happens. We can't think that because we've taken one step, we'll be able to take a break to think about our next move. Life is continuous, and it will not wait for you. Zhou Yu keeps trying to kill Zhuge Liang. Although Zhuge Liang was on paper his ally, Zhou Yu wanted him dead. He hated him. He sought every opportunity to put Zhuge Liang to death, but Zhuge Liang was always one step ahead. Before the Battle of Red Cliffs, Zhuge Liang said to Zhou Yu, "I promise you that within 3 days I will be able to find us 10,000 arrows." Zhou Yu did not believe he could do it. He thought that it was his chance to execute Zhuge Liang. But Zhuge Liang managed to pull it off by tricking the enemy into firing arrows into empty boats. Afterwards, Zhou Yu had planned to use fire to attack the enemy, but realized it wasn't going to work. The dry winter winds blowing to the west would put their own ships at risk. He wanted to use the strategy so badly that he fell ill. But Zhuge Liang came and told him, "Don't worry, my friend, everything is prepared. The only thing we're missing is the east wind, and I will help you borrow it." Zhou Yu again thought to himself, "That is impossible. Nobody can predict the direction of the wind. This will be my second chance at killing Zhuge Liang." But Zhuge Liang was again successful. Amazingly, the winds changed direction, and they were able to use fire for their offensive. And once more, before Zhou Yu had a chance to thank him, Zhuge Liang slipped away on a small boat. Zhuge Liang was always one step ahead of Zhou Yu. One action was closely followed by the next. If he had relied on one plan alone, Zhuge Liang would not be alive. Continuous action is being proactive. If we're proactive, we're the ones taking the lead to change the situation in our favor. Other people will be forced to react to what we put in front of them. Their actions will be restricted. By being proactive, we're increasing our chances of being able to take steps beyond the imagination of others, because we're not giving them the opportunity to properly think about how to respond. Sun Tzu constantly warned against the dangers of a prolonged engagement. All battles, when drawn out, will be a significant drain on resources, putting us at unnecessary risk. The United States has been engaged in many lengthy wars that have lasted for decades, impacting its strength and status on the world stage. Being proactive increases our chances of being able to strike and withdraw quickly. Zhuge knew how he was going to maneuver and retreat up front, so Zhou did not know how to follow. Zhou was too busy responding to even think of Zhuge second and third moves. Continuous action also means constantly becoming stronger and consistently trying to better ourselves. If we're defeated, it won't be because we've been overpowered. It'll be because we weren't sufficiently prepared. As leaders, we shouldn't think about when or if we will be attacked. We should be instead thinking if someone were to attack, would we lose? If we become used to approaching problems from that angle, then we'll know we'll be on the right path of being ahead of change. Consider the opposite view. Okay, so we have to make our moves, but how do we know which are the right moves? There are no neon signs showing us the choices we need to make. You're correct in that there are no assurances about the right path. Acting takes courage. It's totally scary. But you're wrong to believe that a right path exists. There are always multiple and conflicting forces at play at any time, and this is something that you can use to your advantage. Don't look to what a reasonable man would do. Train yourself to think about the opposite of a reasonable man. There was once a man who wanted to transport the fish that he caught in the deep sea to the shore to sell. Unfortunately, back in ancient China, boats were slow, and their speed was dependent on how fast a person could row. By the time he got back to shore with his haul, the fish were barely alive. "My fish will never sell at a good price," the man lamented. But what could he do? The next day, he continued to fish as normal, but when he got to shore, he noticed water splashing from one of his buckets. He walked over and pulled the fish from the bucket, which thrashed wildly trying to escape his grip. An eel had somehow managed to jump from its bucket into the fish's bucket, and with the eel hot on its tail, the fish had to swim and swim. The man had his eureka moment. The threat of danger and the fight for survival was what was needed to keep the fish alive. Being seen in the eyes of a competitor. In a small region in China in the 1990 E's, the electricity market was dominated by one company. There were other competitors in the market, but they were much smaller. China Electric, a pseudonym, was one of the small companies that had set their aim on the larger company as their target. They tried to do everything in their power to compete against them, but did not make any headway for many years. One year, the larger company was holding an anniversary celebration in a grand hotel. The chairman got up on stage and thanked the employees. "We've had a great year this year," he said. "But we cannot let ourselves go. We cannot lose our focus. We must keep powering on and work even harder, so we can keep crushing China Electric with our foot." The chairman's comments were met with huge applause and laughter from the audience because it was rare for the employees to see their chairman make such raw comments. Even though China Electric was still a much smaller second-place company, they finally found some sort of validation. The fact that they were mentioned in the chairman's comments meant they were a real credible threat in the market. "I work to satisfy all their needs and desires, and they will eventually become arrogant and similarly focus solely on the battles in their lives. Be honest, are you one of them? We crave drama and excitement. We love the fight for survival. But how much time do we spend thinking about life when nothing is happening? How much time do we spend thinking about the mundane, day-to-day obstacles? Sun Tzu would tell us that if we're only dreaming of fighting battles, then we're missing out on most of life because, for the most part, life does not involve battles. How we think and act outside of battles matters the most. In the winter of 208b, Sea King Huai I ordered both Lu Bang and Xiang Yu to rescue Xiaoxi from a siege. To make it interesting, he set a competition where the first person to enter the city would be given the title the King of Guansong. Lu Bang would fight through an eastern path, whereas Xiang Yu would take the west. Through a series of fortunate events, Lu Bang had a relatively uneventful journey and managed to enter the city first, whereas Xiang Yu encountered resistance after resistance. But when Xiang Yu later arrived, he forced Lu Bang to leave, disregarding the terms of the competition. For the short time that Lu Bang was there, he went to work. He held town meetings with the locals, abolishing all the harsh laws in place at the time. He replaced hundreds of existing laws with only 3. The punishment for murder would be death, and the punishment for assault and stealing would depend on the severity of the crime. That was it. For a population that was used to penalties for simply reading, this was revolutionary. Xianyu didn't follow Lu Bang's example. Xianyu, already angry that Lu Bang had arrived before him, burned most of the treasures within the city and palace. Not only did he not try to win the support of the people living there, he punished them for being part of the enemy. Unfortunately, this was a pattern for Xianyu, who would consistently struggle to win over the hearts and minds of the people. Many even used this example as a reason not to support him. When we fought hard to win over a city or a group of people, we must continue our work in order to continue to get buy-in and support. We have to reassure the populace to ensure they're comfortable with the people now taking control over their lives. Unlike Xianyu, Lu Bang understood the importance of taking care of the aftermath of war. Fighting is only half of winning a war. How you take advantage of the situation after the battle has stopped is equally important and often overlooked by leaders. If you don't put enough attention into this boring work, you risk wasting all the effort you've put into fighting. In the Japanese-Sino War, which lasted for 8 years, hundreds of thousands of young Chinese men, filled with ambition and courage in their veins, joined the army to fight the Japanese with nothing but a single piece of luggage. They tossed away their own future and replaced it with a vision for the future of the country without a single complaint. But after the Japanese were defeated, the Chinese government disbanded the army, and each soldier was given about $20 to return to their destroyed homes and families. The result: the ruling government lost their grip on the country and retreated from mainland China to Taiwan shortly after. In our own personal lives, the time between life's major events is equally, if not more, important than the events themselves, even though the time may not be as memorable or exciting. For example, if we don't continue with our physical therapy after surgery, we risk being injured again. Marriage is just the beginning of the journey for a newlywed couple, not the end. And you can't judge the value of a property without knowing what you plan to do with it 5 or 10 years from now. There once was a manager of a famous movie artist who was asked about his longer-term goals and vision for the artist. He said, quite frankly, that he was happy with the success and fame of the artist, but the next steps were to solidify the future of her career. To everyone's surprise, he said that the focus of the artist's work now was to plan for the time when they might not be center stage anymore. Even the most popular person will one day leave the stage, so it was about finding the right way in time for that moment to happen and work toward that. Getting onto the stage is easy, leaving it gracefully is what is different. Your entrance onto the stage must be elegant, but so must be your departure. Sun Tzu's lesson here is simple. Spend enough time thinking beyond what is immediately happening. Take a longer-term view. Your exit strategy is a critical component of your plan.